We're here on Green Island looking for the world's largest crocodile. His name is Casius. Casius holds the title in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the largest captive crocodile at nearly 18 feet.
Somewhere in the rivers of Australia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Papua New Guinea, animals have been found that should not be possible. Crocodiles so long that they outsized the boats sent to capture them. Creatures that survived bullets, blades, and decades in the wild, only to be measured, recorded, and confirmed as some of the largest reptiles to ever walk this earth. These are not myths. These are not exaggerated fishing tales passed down through generations. These are 5 crocodiles, each one verifiably measured by scientists, wildlife officers, or trained professionals who together represent the very edge of how large a crocodile can grow. Some of these animals lived for decades before they were ever caught. Others met a sudden and violent end. A few became legends in their own lifetime, feared by entire villages who believed no ordinary animal could grow that large or survive that much and still be alive. And in more than one case, the true story behind these giants is stranger and sadder than the legend itself. This is the countdown of the 5 largest crocodiles ever confirmed by science. Let's begin. Number 5. Lolong. At number 5, we have Lolong, the largest crocodile ever to be captured alive and placed in captivity, and one of the most scientifically documented giant crocodiles in recorded history. The story begins in 2009. In the Agasan Marsh of the Philippines, a vast and remote wetland system on the island of Mindanao. That year, a young schoolgirl was attacked and killed by what witnesses described as an extraordinarily large crocodile. The attack shook the local community deeply, but it also brought to light a previous incident that had gone largely unreported, a sighting of a crocodile so massive that it created visible waves as it moved through the water. 1 month after the girl's death, another sighting was reported. This time, witnesses described a crocodile so long that its body stretched across the entire width of the creek it was swimming in. In 2010, a father and son had their canoe attacked by a large crocodile in the same area. That same year, 2 more independent sightings were recorded. Locals who had seen the animal firsthand estimated its length at anywhere between 23 and 30 feet. While those upper estimates were almost certainly exaggerated, the frequency and consistency of the sightings made it clear that something very large was living in those waters. For a time, no serious effort was made to capture the animal. That changed in 2011, when a local fisherman went missing and was believed to have been taken by a crocodile. This was the moment the government acted. An official permit was issued to remove the crocodile from the marsh, and a team of experienced crocodile trappers was brought in. Metal snares were set across the area, but the operation quickly ran into problems. The crocodile was strong enough to snap the metal snares whenever it was caught in them. Trap after trap failed. The team was dealing with an animal of unusual size and unusual strength, but the effort continued, and in September of 2011, the trappers finally succeeded. A crocodile of extraordinary size was caught and secured. What followed was a test of human effort and coordination. It took several hours, and the combined strength of more than 100 men to pull this animal out of the water. Once on land, the crocodile had to be transported 11 kilometers from the capture site to a specially built enclosure where it would be kept. The animal was given a name, Lolong, chosen in honor of one of the lead crocodile trappers who had passed away shortly before the capture took place. News of the capture spread quickly around the world. Early reports claimed the crocodile measured 21 feet, which drew immediate attention from crocodile researchers and wildlife scientists. In 2012, a team of experts conducted a full scientific measurement of Lolong, the results of which were published in a formal research paper. Lolong's straight-line measurement came out at exactly 20 feet, with an over-the-curve measurement of 20 feet and 3 inches. Additional body measurements were also recorded. These figures made Lolong the officially documented longest crocodile ever held in captivity anywhere in the world. Lolong became a source of pride for the local community. His enclosure drew tourists from across the Philippines and beyond, and his presence brought significant attention to the region. But behind the scenes, things were not going well. Lolong was not thriving in captivity. His living conditions and care did not meet the standards required for an animal of his size and nature. In February of 2013, Lolong died. The cause was linked directly to complications from poor husbandry, the result of an environment that was simply not equipped to keep such an animal alive long-term. His remains were later sent to the Philippine National Museum, where they could be preserved and studied. One question that was never fully answered was whether Lolong was actually responsible for the attacks on local people. After his capture, his stomach was pumped and examined. No human remains were found. On top of that, some locals expressed doubt that Lolong was even the right animal. Witnesses who had seen the crocodile in 2009 and 2010 described it as larger than Lolong and lighter in color. There were even reports suggesting Lolong had been seen in the wild alongside another crocodile that was noticeably bigger. To this day, reports of extremely large crocodiles in the Agusan Marsh continue, though no animal matching or exceeding Lolong's confirmed size has ever been found and measured. Lolong stood at exactly 20 feet. His record as the longest crocodile ever caught alive and scientifically measured remains unbroken. Number 4. Casius. At number 4 we have Casius, a saltwater crocodile that lived in the Finnis River in Australia, where he was known as a problem crocodile around a local cattle station. But Casius may have already had a name long before locals ever called him that. For years, many believed he was once known as Sweetheart. Sweetheart was the name given to a saltwater crocodile that became infamous in the Finnis River during the 1970s. This crocodile had a strange habit. Whenever a boat motor was switched on nearby, the animal would become agitated and attack the boat itself. No person was ever injured in these encounters, but several boats were damaged. And in some cases it seemed the motor was the specific target of the attack. In 1979, a crocodile believed to be Sweetheart was caught, but doubts remained among locals about whether this was truly the same animal responsible for the attacks. Those doubts lingered until Casius was captured 5 years later, in 1984, after being labeled a nuisance crocodile. He was trapped only 1 mile from the location where the Sweetheart attacks had taken place. Pulling him from the trap required a vehicle built for handling buffalo, just to load him onto a trailer for transport. Once examined, 2 details stood out immediately. First, this was clearly a very old crocodile. Second, his body told a story of survival. At least 6 inches were missing from his tail, and the tip of his snout was gone as well, sliced away cleanly, almost as if by a boat propeller. For many, this was the first real clue connecting Casius to Sweetheart. The strongest evidence, however, came later after Casius was settled into captivity. He first lived at a crocodile farm in Darwin before eventually moving to Green Island, where he would spend the rest of his life under the care of George Craig. While living there, Casius would become visibly distressed whenever a loud motor-like sound occurred nearby, the exact reaction reported about Sweetheart years earlier. For Craig, this was the final piece of proof. He was convinced his crocodile and the legendary Sweetheart were one and the same. Despite his violent past, Casius lived a long and gentle life on Green Island. George Craig took great pride in him, and for several years Casius held the record for the longest crocodile living in captivity anywhere in the world. Surprisingly, for an animal his size, he showed a calm temperament. At one point, a hatchling crocodile wandered into his enclosure, and rather than harming it, Casius allowed the baby to rest on top of his head. Casius lived until 2024, when he passed away due to old age combined with a long-term infection his body could no longer fight off. But there may be more to his decline than age alone. In the weeks before his death, Casius had still been active and in good spirits. That changed only after George Craig was moved into an assisted care facility. Shortly after, Casius stopped eating and his health quickly declined. Whether the absence of his lifelong caretaker played a role in his death remains an open question, but the timing was hard to ignore. Within 2 weeks of Casius passing away, George Craig passed away as well. 2 long lives, deeply connected, ended within days of each other. At the time of his death, Casius measured 18 feet long in a straight line. But accounting for his missing snout tip and the lost section of tail, researchers estimate his true length while alive was closer to 19 feet. Number 3. Old Charlie. At number 3, we have Old Charlie. a saltwater crocodile that lived in the Mary River of Australia during the final years of legal crocodile hunting in the country. He was a survivor in every sense of the word. By the time he became well known to the people living along the river, Old Charlie already had 2 bullets lodged in his head from previous encounters with hunters. The bullets had not killed him. They had not even slowed him down. He had simply carried them and kept living. When Australia banned crocodile hunting, Old Charlie was still there. He had outlasted the hunters, outlasted the era, and was now protected by law. For a crocodile that had survived as much as he had, it should have been the beginning of a safer chapter. Instead, it would be the beginning of the end. On the 1st of July 1974, a group of poachers set an illegal fishing net in the Mary River. At some point during the night, Old Charlie became entangled in it. When the poachers arrived to check their net the following morning, they found him still caught in it. What was notable about this moment was that Old Charlie was calm. He had been caught in nets before and had always been cut free without incident. One of the men present, Coulter Allerton, wanted to do exactly that, cut the net and let the crocodile go. But the other man, Roy Wright, had a different idea entirely. Wright saw an opportunity. A crocodile this size meant a valuable skin, and he was not willing to walk away from it. Despite the fact that killing this animal was illegal, Wright took an axe and delivered the blow that ended Old Charlie's life. The 2 men then left the body in the river and returned the following day with their families to skin it. What they found when they came back made it clear just how large this animal truly was. The body was so heavy that a car had to be used to drag it out of the water, and even then the car struggled under the weight. Once the crocodile was on land, photographs were taken and the skinning process began. The head and feet were removed and kept as trophies. The rest of the body was left behind at the riverbank. The crime did not go unnoticed. A local schoolteacher spotted the remains of a large dead crocodile and reported it. Wildlife officer Vic Peterson arrived at the scene to investigate. Authorities launched an effort to find whoever was responsible, eventually offering a reward that climbed as high as $1,000. The investigation led them to a buried tub at a nearby property, where they found Old Charlie's severed head and feet. The photographs taken at the scene were also recovered, and they became key evidence in identifying Roy Wright as the man responsible for the killing. Wright was prosecuted for the illegal killing of a protected animal. The headless body of Old Charlie measured 18 feet in a straight line, as recorded by Vic Peterson at the scene. Later, in 1978, the dorsal cranial length of his skull was formally reported as 66.6 centimeters. This measurement is significant because it allows researchers to estimate the crocodile's total length more precisely. The dorsal cranial length of a saltwater crocodile skull is typically around 77.5% of the full mandible length. Working from that ratio, Old Charlie's total length, including his head, which converts to just over 20 feet. However, researchers have pointed out that this is likely a conservative estimate. The dorsal cranial length does not account for the mandibles, and evidence suggests the head was cut from the body well behind the cranial platform, did not include the full length of the neck and head. Some have estimated Old Charlie's true length could have been closer to 21 feet, though this remains debated since the exact point at which the head was removed from the body is not precisely known. What is not debated is his place in the record books. Old Charlie remains the longest crocodile ever confirmed in Australia, a crocodile that survived bullets, outlasted hunters, and lived long enough to be protected by law, only to be killed illegally by a man who saw nothing more than a valuable skin. His story is one of the more sobering entries on this list. Number 2. Bujang Senang. Not every crocodile on this list was simply a large animal living in a river. Some carried a story far bigger than their size alone. Bujang Senang was one of those crocodiles, a saltwater crocodile that lived in the Batang Lupar River of Sarawak, Malaysia, and left behind a legacy that blended documented fact with deeply held belief. To the local communities living along the Batang Lupar, Bujang Senang was not merely a crocodile, he was something supernatural. The belief among many locals was that this animal was the reincarnation of a warrior named Lolong, a man who had been killed alongside his wife by enemies in the 18th century. According to the legend, Lolong returned from death in the form of a white crocodile, driven by one purpose: to kill his enemies and every one of their descendants. For the communities along that river, Bujang Senang was a force with intent, and that belief shaped how people understood every attack that followed. The earliest possible reports of attacks linked to Bujang Senang stretch back to the mid and possibly early 20th century, though these remain difficult to verify with precision. The first well-documented attack tied to this crocodile, when a man was killed by a large crocodile reported to have a distinctly white back. This detail, the white back, would become the defining physical feature used to identify Bujang Senang across every subsequent attack report. Following the 1982 killing, the government launched a formal operation known as Operation Buaganas, a coordinated effort to locate and capture the crocodile responsible. The operation failed. Bujang Senang was not caught. The attacks continued over the following years, each one deepening the fear that had already taken hold of the communities along the river. Bujang Senang is believed to have been responsible for multiple fatal attacks spanning roughly a decade. The final attack occurred in 1992. A young woman was seen being seized by the crocodile and pulled into the river. This attack proved to be the turning point. A group of local men came together with a single goal: to end what Bujang Senang had been doing to their community once and for all. Sections of the river were blocked off to limit the crocodile's movement. The men came armed with guns and spears and entered into what can only be described as a prolonged and dangerous confrontation with the animal. At one point during the confrontation, Bujang Senang opened his jaws wide and let out a loud, deep vocalization described by those present as resembling a roar. He was shot multiple times. Eventually, the animal succumbed, and the terror of the Batang Lupar River was finally over. 24 men worked together to tie up the body and bring it to shore. Once on land, the body was examined. What they found confirmed what witnesses had been reporting for years. The crocodile's back was distinctly white, exactly as described in every account going back to the first documented attack. When measured, Bujang Senang came in at 19 feet and 3 inches in a straight line. Johnson Jiang of Yong's Crocodile Farm, who was present at the examination, recorded this measurement and also retained the skull of the crocodile after the body was discarded into the river. For years, the skull sat largely unstudied. That changed in March of 2024, when a formal examination confirmed that Bujang Senang possessed the longest head length of any known saltwater crocodile on record, with a skull measuring 77 centimeters. This was a significant finding, and it raised further questions about the crocodile's true total length. Also in 2024, a photographic analysis of images taken at the time of the crocodile's death revealed something that had gone unnoticed for decades. The tail of Bujang Senang appeared to be incomplete. Only 13 single-crested tail scutes were visible in the photographs, suggesting a portion of the tail was missing. Debate followed about how much tail was actually absent. Some researchers estimated the crocodile was missing at least a foot of tail, possibly more. Johnson Jiang, drawing on his memory of the examination, suggested only 3 to 4 inches were missing. Given that this was based on recollection rather than documented measurement, the question remains open. If Bujang Senang had his full tail intact, it is possible his total length could have exceeded 20 feet. But without harder evidence, that remains an estimate rather than a confirmed figure. What is confirmed is the measured length of 19 feet and 3 inches, the white back that witnesses described consistently across more than a decade, and a skull that now holds the record for the longest head of any saltwater crocodile ever documented. Whatever the full truth of Bujang Senang's size, the facts alone are enough to place him firmly among the largest crocodiles ever verified. Number 1. Seko. Some records are broken over time. Others are set so definitively that decades pass and nothing comes close to touching them. Seko belongs to the second category. A saltwater crocodile that lived in the Fly River of Papua New Guinea, Seko holds the title of the longest crocodile ever verifiably measured, and the story of how that measurement came to be is as remarkable as the animal itself. Seko was not an unknown creature. He had lived in the Fly River long enough to become well known to the local communities along its banks. His size and presence had not gone unnoticed, and at some point his reputation reached George Craig, the same man who would later care for Casius on Green Island. Craig was an experienced crocodile hunter, and he made attempts to capture Seco. Every attempt failed. Seco remained in the river, untouched and uncatchable for years. His end, when it finally came, was not the result of a hunt, it was an accident. On the 11th of October 1979, a group of villagers had a small fishing net set in the Fly River, as was common practice in the area. At some point during the night, Seco's jaws became wrapped around the net, most likely because he had been attempting to take a fish that was already caught in it. With his jaws tangled, Seco rolled in the water the way crocodiles instinctively do when struggling. But instead of freeing himself, the rolling made things worse. He became more and more entangled, and at some point he could no longer surface properly. Seco drowned. When the villagers arrived to check their net and discovered what was in it, the scale of what they were dealing with quickly became clear. It took 50 villagers working together to pull the body of Seco out of the water and onto the bank. Once on land, the villagers began to open the crocodile, and what they found inside was remarkable in its own right. A fully intact sambar deer, whole inside Seco's stomach. The meat of the crocodile was divided among the villagers as was customary, and the body was skinned. It was at this point that the scientific record of Seco began. A team of scientists working on a United Nations crocodile conservation project in the region had heard reports of a very large crocodile drowning nearby. They made their way to the site and arrived to find the villagers already in the process of skinning the animal. Working with what was available, the scientists aligned the skull of the crocodile with the unstretched skin laid out on the ground and obtained an initial measurement of 20 feet and 4 inches for the straight line length. However, the scientists were careful to note the limitations of this measurement. The skin had been lying in direct sunlight for approximately 14 hours by the time it was measured. Crocodile skin, like most animal skin, expands when exposed to heat and sun over an extended period. On top of that, the tail of the crocodile was incomplete, meaning the full length of the animal was not even represented in what was being measured. Taking both of these factors into account, the scientists estimated Seco's true straight line length at 20 feet and 8 inches. The formal scientific documentation of Seco's measurements was published in 1983 by Jerome Montague, one of the scientists present at the site. This paper presented detailed measurements of Seco's body, making it the first time that comprehensive scientific data had been published on a crocodile confirmed to exceed 20 feet. That documentation was what cemented Seco's place in the record books. His confirmed length of 20 feet and 8 inches remains to this day the longest measurement ever recorded for a crocodile under verifiable scientific conditions. There is one more detail worth noting. At the time of Seco's death, regulations in Papua New Guinea prohibited the sale of any crocodile skin with a belly width exceeding 50 centimeters. Seco's skin far exceeded that limit. The government took possession of the skin, had it preserved with salt, and sent it to Japan to be tanned. The skull was retained by the local wildlife office. Between the skull, the skin, and the published measurements, the physical record of Seco's existence was well documented across multiple sources. What makes Seco's story particularly striking is the combination of factors surrounding it. He was an animal that resisted every deliberate attempt to catch him. He was never trapped, never hunted down, never overpowered by human effort. In the end, a small fishing net and an instinct to roll in the water was what brought him down. And yet, in death, he left behind a measurement that has stood for over 4 decades and has never been surpassed by any crocodile since. The Fly River still flows through Papua New Guinea today. Whether an animal of Seco's size or larger still moves through those waters is something no one can say for certain. But the fact that Seco existed within the last 50 years, measured, documented, and confirmed, is proof enough that the rivers of this world are still capable of producing animals that test the boundaries of what we think is possible. These 5 crocodiles were not legends or folklore. They were real animals measured and documented that push the boundaries of how large a living reptile can grow. And given that every single one of them was found within the last 100 years, one thought is hard to shake. If animals this size existed then, there is no reason to believe the rivers have stopped producing them. The next record may already be out there, waiting to be found.